Okay, is Kate available for the volunteer payment? She had a PowerPoint, but I think we can go through this one without her. Or okay, Mary wants to do her.
Governor Rathbone.
Yeah. Yes. What? I think I can handle it. I'll make sure you get the shout out and all the credit. You'd be really bored. You'd see a lot less eye rolls though. Give me just a minute. I'm just pulling up my notes. All right, so we're up. We're good, Rex. Okay. Thank you. This is actually my first presentation to the board, which I volunteered for. I am the co-chair for the Volunteer Engagement Council. Not seated next to me, but seated at his table is the star of the show, Matthew Dresden. And he has so kindly allowed me to co-chair this council with him, and I've enjoyed it very much. And Matthew and I, along with Kevin, have would like to present to you today our viability review proposed criteria. So to give you a little bit of background, don't ask me for citations. Also, if you have 100 questions today, there's going to be 100 I don't knows and follow up with Kevin. So how this came before you as the governors is within our bylaws is an automatic trigger for sections if their membership dips below 75. And that has occurred here in 2 instances. And essentially what we're looking for is a criteria to evaluate. So thank you, Rex. This is like the best paralegal of all time. So the purpose is to fulfill the WSBA mission and provide value to the profession. And the 2 sections currently under review, again, this is a number trigger, and I like that because I think it sort of sets just a very straightforward number. I do want to preface this and say, though, at least as far as our discussions in the council, I don't think this should be purely a numbers driven decision because there are meaningful sections and they do a lot of hard work, especially those little sections, and they have a lot of really good output. So this is not an attempt to, I guess, disparage or to put sections who have 75 members or below in the situation where they feel like we're picking on them or that we're trying to get rid of them. That's not the case at all. This is more of a collaborative approach to attempt to get the sections to be back in the compliance with our bylaws. So those sections here are the liquor, cannabis, and psychedelics law, which sounds like a lot of fun. And the legal assistance to military personnel. If you're the liaison for either of those sections, let's chat offline after this. And I want you to also be part of that discussion. I could look at the list myself, but I don't know who that is specifically. Next slide. So within the materials is the proposed evaluation criteria. I'm not going to go over all of it. I think at least my goal today and my co-chair's goal is to just reiterate that we want to offer support and services to the sections so that they can get back in compliance with the bylaws and offer meaningful and wonderful services to the section members. And I know that Kevin has done a lot of work at the front of that, communicating with the chairs, explaining to the chairs, look, we're going through this process, but this is a collaborative process between the staff and the sections and now the governors. So The criteria is outlined in your materials. I'm sure you've all reviewed it in advance. I know it's perfect. But I think to just kind of pull out the horse one more time, it's really important that we consider that this isn't just a numbers game, that there is meaningful things that are happening in small sections, and we recognize that as the council. And I would like to think that we would recognize that as a board and the WSB as a whole. Next slide. So this is the process and timeline. As soon as the criteria is approved, we will begin engaging with the sections and the WSBA staff, as well as the Volunteer Engagement Council. We will make recommendations hopefully by July at the July meeting. And that will come back before the Board of Governors. Where is the July meeting? Tulalip? Okay, so we'll be in Wenatchee, hopefully enjoying wine or non-alcoholic wine, something fun. But the whole approach here, again, because we want to make sure that sections don't feel like we're picking on them, is that this is a collaborative, transparent approach to making sure that, at least on behalf of the Bar Association, we're doing our due diligence of making sure our programs are providing services to members and the sections themselves. Next slide. Is that it? Where's the end? Oh, no. So the action requested here, I think that's pretty straight. Thank you, Rex. It's pretty straightforward. I will entertain reasonable questions if there are any. I don't anticipate there will be, but if you want to hear a little bit more insight about sort of the conversations we're having between the co-chairs and Kevin, happy to, yes, Governor Villanueva.
So why did you say that non-alcoholic wine was fun?
I'm trying to serve folks of different, some people think it is fun, and I'm not one of them, but they might. Governor Ahern.
Okay, I like the idea of the bar looking at sections to ensure that they provide meaningful service to members. But I think we should be having a program where we're looking at all sections, because I'm, for example, as part of the litigation section, there's so many flipping litigators in our bar membership that you're never going to go below 75, and we're not ensuring that they're providing meaningful services to our members. So I would like some sort of an adjustment where we're looking at all sections regardless of size.
Let it be known and let it be heard, I will be issuing a correction to Governor Ahern. There is a review of all sections, and it's submitted in their annual reports at the end of the year. That's where the Bar Association gets the information. So at least to that extent, it is being reviewed. I would agree with you in the sense that there isn't a sort of rubric for reviewing the annual review at the section review at the end of the year. It's sort of, did they submit it or did they not submit it? But I will say they are looking at whether there were services provided, but we're not grading those services, right? So I think to your point, we need to make sure we're reviewing all sections. Yes, but there needs to be some non-discriminatory sort of triggers that get us to the point of the viability review here. As far as what that is, that's still an open discussion, at least from the Volunteer Engagement Council. I would say too, this might also need to be a collaborative approach with the governance committee. I see your hands up. I'll acknowledge you after I finish talking. With the governance committee and addressing the bylaws component of it, because I think that's where we would need to look to find the triggers for section review.
Yeah, my point is, if the written report that every section gives is enough to know whether they're viable or doing services, we don't need to do this extra review. And my only point is, if there are, and I'm making up numbers, 100 lawyers that do the cannabis stuff, saying you have to have 75 be a part of your section is a big lift. If there are 10,000 members that are litigators, saying you need 75 members is not a lift at all. I just think we should be looking at all of them with the equal bigger or whatever.
I
So that's-
agree. I do. I agree with you in that because there are areas of practice that are more limited than others. I think we are having actively that discussion as to whether, because I think liquor and cannabis is at like 73. I mean, they're not very far off. But really, I think at this point, unless there is going to be another sort of committee that's designed to review sections, which got a lot going on, it it does become a little bit difficult. I just want to reiterate again, we're not here to look at solely at numbers. We just need to make sure that at least within the triggering language of the bylaws, we're following the bylaws. And then also offering support to hopefully get their membership increased. So but your points are well taken and know that they are actively being discussed by the council. Governor Fay.
I'm going to jump in a little bit as far as the governance council goes. The reason this has taken place is I believe this section was added to the bylaws as a result of the sections policy work group back, I think
I think it was earlier than that.
okay.
It was.
Either way, golly, if people were looking at the bylaws and looking at things that don't make much sense and could be deleted, this is probably one of those provisions. And we might be looking at that, just saying.
To that point, I would only offer my comments. Again, this is not the purpose of my presentation, but the one thing about numbers that I have reiterated to the council that I like is it is a purely number driven system to avoid the, I guess what I could foresee happening of you're only reviewing our section because you don't like something about it that is not numbers driven.
Right.
So
I guess the other point I would make here is that the bar staff, in particular, Ms. Carolyn McGregor, dedicates her life to supporting sections. Some sections do better than others, and the WISPA staff knows who they are and what needs. And of course, that the whole member engagement council, Kevin Placci and his minions, worked very hard to help the sections with their mission. What I found, as far as the numbers go, the other section here is the support for military lawyers. I don't know the actual name. There just aren't that many military lawyers. They can be small but mighty, like Sunitha. So they do great work. There's just not a lot of them. And that really isn't not a reason to put them under a microscope every 3 years. When you have a bunch of litigators who don't do anything, right? At least that's what we're told.
Okay. Advancement Chief Kevin Placci and then Governor Lane.
Yeah, I just want to add a little context to this. So that provision in the bylaw that triggers a section viability review at 75 members has been in existence for a long time, like way before I got here. The numbers changed a little bit, but the provision's been there for a long time. My own personal opinion is I do think it probably should be revisited. This is the first time we've ever had to do a viability review under that bylaw provision. And so that's why we're going through this whole process, because we haven't done it before. So we don't even have criteria to evaluate them on because we've never had to. So first of all, we appreciate the board going through this and helping us develop the criteria and approving it. One thing that was brought up in the executive committee whenever this was assigned to the member engagement council were concerns that this wouldn't come across as appearing very heavy-handed or punitive to the sections. And that's why the criteria was brought back to the full board to evaluate, to make sure that the criteria is being looked at very holistically. And there's not just this very narrow assessment of whether they're adding value or not. And so just from my own personal viewpoint, I don't know what the correct criteria necessarily is, but I think we need to revisit it. Not this criteria, but the bylaw provision. I'm not sure the bylaw provision that triggers a viability review is the correct one. And we should probably do a little more recent research on what would be the best criteria and maybe look at revising the bylaws eventually, because I do think that one thing is probably not comprehensive enough and doesn't consider enough things about the value the sections add to trigger something. And maybe it's not even a trigger, maybe it's just we have a standard rotating review of sections or something, so it's not pointing anyone out or not directed at any particular section, but puts them all through a rotating review of some type.
Governor Lane and then Governor Addison.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that just want to support this initiative, but not on same grounds, which is the section important and there's doing the purpose. It's more from a corporate standpoint. You know, restaurants add things to menus and they just stay there. And if you ask yourself a question, do we have a client that likes this product? Of course, the menu keeps going bigger and bigger, and companies add products and SKUs to their lists. And first thing you know, the company is overburdened by very large amounts of products that they're selling. And lawyers are very good at adding new laws, but they're not very good at editing themselves and removing laws. And at the end of the day, you end up with a legal code or a legal process that is very, very heavy. So if nothing else, if the effort is one that is scheduled in order to see if we're not burdening the membership as a whole and not just a section, that's kind of like my approach to this. And so I'm in strong favor of the process that you're proposing.
Thank you.
Governor Addison.
I love the idea of having it on a schedule, like you mentioned, so that everyone gets reviewed and see if that everyone's needs are being met. I have a technical question of what you're looking for today.
Is it reasonable?
I believe so. But
Okay.
you can tell me. You can tell me if not. Is what we're being asked to approve intended to be the criteria that would apply until we adopt something else, or is this just specifically for these two sections that need to be reviewed this year?
So that's a great question. Yes, because and Kevin can jump in or Matthew can jump in at any time and offer corrections. I guess I can only answer for my interpretation of what I think. My interpretation is that these are a baseline, these are not a ceiling. And so at least if we have some initial parameters, because this is the first time we're actually doing this viability review within our council, again, I just see it more as a floor, not a ceiling, as to what blanket application parameters we can apply, but they're not like percentage driven, right? So if we're looking at a specific factor, it doesn't have, at least my understanding, any more value than any other factor. But I think we're just looking for an initial sort of, I would consider it sort of a draft, and then we mold it as we go. And then when we issue our final report, give our feedback as far as what we think would be more helpful in developing more of a blanket approach, a policy. But Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I think the intent was that it would provide some guidance because the bylaw provision's there, and it's living on. So it would be helpful if this was approved as some guidance if we needed to do it again. And just thinking off the top of my head, I'm not sure that any section's going to trigger anything within the next year or two, but I think it would be good. And maybe we revisit this after we've gone through the process and see how this worked. But it would be good, given that the bylaw provision is still there and exists, that we had some framework if it comes up again. And then again, I would just encourage a revisit of the bylaws at some point.
Thank you. In light of that, I would like to move to approve this for the two sections that are up for review, with the addition that if you could include in that final report afterwards, any suggestions you'd have to change it in the future, and including the perspective from these sections, how they felt it went, and if they would provide any feedback on this review in the future. Was that a clear enough motion for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
You want us to follow up about, yeah, I think that is really clear before, so I guess it needs to be discussion. So if there's a second, I'll wait until discussion.
I'll second.
May I be recognized, President Adewale? The only other thing I do want to add is I do agree in a sense that we should have a schedule review for sections, and maybe the number trigger isn't the best policy, but also with that, we need to consider what type of burden that's going to put on the staff here, because that essentially is the heavy lifting. I mean, I would say I'd like to thank Carolyn and the staff here working with sections, because they do care and they put a lot of work into, and they really are passionate about making sure that they're successful. And I had another issue on a liaison section I'm on come up. And so I got to talk to Carolyn before this presentation, and I'm happy I did. But also understanding there might need to be an analysis as far as what would we be asking the staff to do if there were any changes. And again, I think that's probably more fits squarely better within the governance committee, but I just want to thank the staff and make sure that the board understands how much work that they put into it.
All right, we're about at time. So if there's no further comment, I will restate the motion and have Governor Arneson confirm that it is an accurate reflection. So it's a motion to adopt the proposal for review of the 2 identified sections with a request that the final report include recommendations for any changes to the process, which are informed by feedback from the participating sections. Okay. So we will proceed to a vote.
Yes.
Okay. Allison Whitney,
Aye.
Mary Rathbone,
Aye.
Kevin Fay, Alan Villeneuve,
Aye.
Todd Bloom,
Aye.
Carvin Price,
Aye.
Matthew Dresden,
Aye.
Christina Larry,
Aye.
Chris Bang,
Yes.
Nam Nguyen, Emily Arneson,
Yes.
Tom Ahern, Kari Petrasik. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. I'm guessing the standing ovation is in your hearts for Matthew Dresden.
She was about to.
I'm kidding. No.
We are going to adjourn for lunch, and we are going to. Where are we going? Convention Center. Oh, look it up on Zoom. Okay. Thank you. We'll see you all there.
We can leave stuff here, yes.